If you are listening to this right now, chances are you're using a device that connects you to the greatest repository of human knowledge ever created.
Right, you're basically holding the entire world in your pocket.
Exactly. But I really want you to ask yourself a question as we get started today. Who actually owns the infrastructure you're using to hear my voice right now?
Because that is the trillion-dollar question.
It really is. And today, we are going on a mission to decode a massive, almost unbelievable historical anomaly. We've got our hands on a dense, incredibly fascinating 2025 document from the Italian research collective FollowTheAlgorithm.
Yeah, it's called La Breve Illusione, the brief illusion.
And it explores a mystery that affects literally every single one of us. How did the internet, which was a technology engineered specifically to disperse power, somehow become the greatest wealth-concentrating machine in human history?
It's a complete paradox.
It is. So we're going to break this down for you in 3 parts. First, we'll look at a miraculous 15-year window where the open web actually triumphed over corporate monopolies.
A very brief window.
Right. Second, we'll uncover exactly how corporate capital hijacked that digital utopia. And finally, we'll outline the collective's blueprint for how we might reclaim it.
Which is the most important part, I think.
Absolutely. And just a quick note before we dive in. The sources we are looking at today touch on the ideologies of very different political groups, from Californian libertarians to European left-wing anti-authoritarians.
Right, a really wide spectrum.
Yeah, so I want to be crystal clear with you that in this deep dive, we are not endorsing or taking sides with any of these political viewpoints. We're looking at them strictly and impartially as historical forces.
Just as the drivers that shape the architecture of the network we use today.
Exactly.
And the stakes of this deep dive really could not be higher. We are talking about the fundamental structure of global power.
Yeah.
Because the core premise of the brief illusion is that every major technological revolution in modern history, steam power, railways, electricity, they all destroyed old power structures only to create new, more concentrated and often more brutal monopolies.
They centralize power. Always. There is no natural law that says technology bends toward freedom. But for one brief, shining moment, the internet actually did.
It actually did.
And understanding how that happened and how it was lost is literally the only way we can understand the digital cage we currently live in.
Right, and to really visualize this, there's a graph from the source called the Great Curve. I want you to imagine a chart tracking global wealth concentration from 1850 all the way to 2025.
It's a very long timeline.
Yeah, and for over a century, the curve representing the top 1%'s wealth just goes up and up with every new technology.
Right.
The railroad barons get richer. The oil tycoons get richer.
The standard historical pattern.
Exactly. But then right around 1985, something completely bizarre happens.
Right.
The line representing the top 1% actually dips.
It genuinely goes down.
It flattens out and dips, while the zone representing decentralized distributed power surges upward. Okay, let's unpack this. Usually, technological revolutions concentrate wealth.
But for 15 years, from roughly 1985 to 2000, the internet actually decentralized power. It actively resisted the massive gravity of corporate capital.
That dip right there, that is the brief illusion.
Yeah.
It is a stunning visual representation of an absolute historical anomaly. And to understand why this is so rare, we have to look back at the Canadian media theorist Harold Innis.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Right. So long before the internet even existed, Innis argued that the medium isn't just the message, it is the political economy of the message.
I mean, what exactly?
Meaning whoever owns the channel of transmission owns the power to determine whose voices are heard and at what price.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But digital capitalism is structurally different from the industrial capitalism of the past because of one terrifying economic concept: zero marginal cost.
Right, and we need to pause here because that concept is huge. If John D. Rockefeller wanted to double his oil monopoly in the 19th century, he had to physically build thousands of miles of steel pipes.
He had to hire thousands of workers.
Buy actual land. That takes immense capital and physical effort. But if a tech giant today wants to double its software monopoly, what do?
They press copy and paste.
Literally. Replicating a piece of software or a massive data set costs absolutely nothing.
Yeah, precisely. That zero marginal cost allows for profit margins and monopolies on a scale that a 19th century steel baron couldn't even dream of.
Because the friction is just gone.
The traditional economic friction is entirely gone, which makes that 15-year anomaly, that dip in the curve where wealth actually decentralized, all the more miraculous.
So how did it happen? How did we get this miraculous 15-year window?
It's a great question.
The document calls the origin of the open web a field of resonance, basically a bizarre historical collision of different cultures and needs. And it traces the origins back to a place you really wouldn't expect, World War II.
Yeah, that surprised me too.
Think about the Manhattan Project or the code breakers at Bletchley Park. We tend to think of radical information sharing today as this utopian, philosophical ideal.
Like a hacker ethos.
Right, but back then, it wasn't about philosophy at all. It was survival engineering. The only way the Allies could win the war was if top-tier scientists shared their findings freely and instantly across borders.
They had to.
They lived inside this open, collaborative system, and when the war ended, they took that culture back to their university labs.
What's fascinating here is the introduction of cybernetics into this equation.
Tell me about Norbert Wiener.
Right, Norbert Wiener. He was a brilliant mathematician at MIT who worked on anti-aircraft systems during the war, and he formalized the concept of feedback loops.
Okay.
Wiener realized that closed systems where information is restricted and heavily controlled, cannot self-correct.
They just break down.
They accumulate errors, they become rigid, and eventually they degrade and fail entirely. Open systems, on the other hand, constantly self-correct through feedback.
That makes a lot of sense.
And for Wiener, this wasn't just abstract math. It was a profound warning about privatizing communication. And that wartime survival logic, that desperate need for a resilient open system, was hard-coded directly into the early internet protocols like ARPANET and TCP/IP.
Let's break down TCP/IP for a second, because I think a lot of people hear that acronym and their eyes just completely glaze over.
It sounds incredibly dense.
It does, but think of TCP/IP like the postal sorting rules of the early internet. It was designed to be entirely blind.
Line to the content.
Exactly. It didn't care if you were sending a classified military document, a recipe for pie, or a love letter. It just chopped the information into little packets and passed it along, figuring out the best route. The network itself was completely neutral.
It didn't judge the data?
Right. The engineers intentionally built a network that was stupid at the center and smart at the edges. No one authority could control the flow of information from the middle.
And that architectural choice is everything. It prevented an early monopoly because there was no central toll booth.
But wait, here's the part that I find genuinely hard to wrap my head around. Are you seriously telling me that hyper-academic, straight-laced European scientists and Californian hippie dropouts basically stumbled into the exact same digital utopia by accident?
I know it sounds absurd, but yes. That is what the authors called the transatlantic mashup.
It's so crazy.
They were playing the exact same chord from completely different continents, driven by completely different motivations.
It's wild. Over in Europe, you had the massive academic institution at CERN in Switzerland. That's where Tim Berners-Lee invents HTTP and HTML, the actual building blocks of the World Wide Web.
The foundation of it all.
Right, and in 1991, he just gives them away for free. He didn't patent them. He didn't try to become a billionaire.
It could have.
He easily could have, but he did it because the European academic tradition viewed knowledge as a public good. And then, thousands of miles away in California, you had the hippie counterculture.
A totally different vibe.
Completely. You had people like Stuart Brand who created the Whole Earth catalog in the late 60s. If you've never seen one, imagine a massive phone book-sized manual for communal living full of DIY tools, farming techniques, and early computer network guides.
It was basically an analog internet.
Exactly, a decentralized directory for radical self-reliance. Brand famously said that information wants to be free. So you have these Californian dropouts and the European academics sharing a profound structural preference for the horizontal over the vertical.
And they formed an emergent system without even trying to coordinate.
They just built it.
They proved that you could build a massive functional infrastructure based purely on peer-to-peer sharing. And as these forces converged throughout the 90s, they created a feedback loop that institutionalized itself into the architecture of the web.
Which brings us to the absolute peak of the brief illusion, the year 1999. I want you to picture this. It's 1999, Napster launches, and within 18 months, it hits 80 million users.
80 million. That is staggering for that era.
Unbelievable growth. Anyone who was around then remembers the magic of downloading a song directly from someone else's computer on the other side of the world. It became the largest music library in human history, and it operated without a central server controlling the files.
Pure peer-to-peer power.
Raw power. Around the exact same time, you have Richard Stallman taking the concept of copyright and turning it into a weapon for the open web.
Yes, the creation of copyleft, or the general public license, the GPL.
Exactly. Normally, copyright says, I made this, you can't touch it. Stallman flipped it inside out. He engineered a legal hack that basically said, I made this, anyone can use it and modify it, but only if you also share whatever you make out of it for free.
It's brilliant.
He guaranteed that software could remain open forever. And right before this peak, in 1996, you had John Perry Barlow writing his famous Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace.
A very bold document.
He literally told the governments of the industrial world to leave the internet alone, telling them they had no sovereignty in this new digital world.
But reading that declaration now, with the benefit of hindsight, is just devastating.
It really is.
Barlow radically overestimated the network's ability to resist capitalist reincorporation. The communities that built the open internet created this brilliant decentralized infrastructure, but they simply couldn't imagine that capital would find a way to enclose it from the inside out.
They couldn't see it coming.
They effectively left the keys in the locks of the doors they built. When Napster was legally crushed in 2001, it wasn't a technological defeat. Peer-to-peer technology like BitTorrent survived and thrived for years after.
Right.
It was a political and legal defeat. It was the crucial signal that the centrifugal forces of the open web had hit their structural limit. The state and the corporation had pushed back, and they were winning.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the corporate takeover didn't look like a takeover. It looked like a party.
That's the insidious part.
Yeah. After the dot-com bust in 2000, we got the Trojan horse known as Web 2.0. The term was coined around 2004, and it was sold to all of us as a democratic renaissance. Everyone gets a blog. Everyone gets a social profile.
But it was actually the funeral of the open web.
We went from painstakingly coding our own ugly, blinking GeoCities fan pages to just handing Mark Zuckerberg our entire psychological profile because it was easier to upload a photo to his server.
It was a brilliant, entirely silent enclosure of the digital commons. The structural difference between Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 wasn't about how much content was out there. It was about who owned the infrastructure holding the content.
Right.
In the early web, you were a node. You were an equal, active participant routing information in a network. In Web 2.0, you were reduced to a terminal.
The terminal, that's a huge shift.
You stopped publishing to your own independent website and started uploading your life to a private database owned by a corporation.
Yeah.
So we started using the word platform, which is incredibly deceptive. It sounds like a neutral stage or a public square where people just happen to gather.
Right.
But platforms are actually infrastructures of extraction. They are meticulously designed to capture the rent generated by your interactions.
Oh.
And the ultimate trap snapped completely shut in 2007 with the introduction of the iPhone. Apple introduced the App Store, centralized the entire mobile ecosystem, and slapped a 30% tax on the digital economy.
And we just let it happen.
They locked the doors, and we cheered them on.
And once we were all locked happily inside those walled gardens, the business model shifted entirely to surveillance. The source document leans heavily into Shoshana Zuboff's concept of behavioral surplus.
Essential reading for this topic.
Absolutely. All that extra data you generate every single day, how long your thumb hovers over a photo of your ex, what time of night you doom scroll, who you interact with most, it's all scooped up.
It's not ignored.
No, it's not just stored in some harmless archive. It's converted into predictive products. They sell the ability to predict and ultimately influence what you are going to do next.
But there is an even more unsettling layer here. Think about the Italian media theorist, Fausto Colombo.
Okay.
Way back in 2013, Colombo formulated the concept of sociable power. He argued that social media hides its immense power behind a mask of sociability, ease, and connection.
It feels friendly.
Exactly. You don't feel like you're being extracted from when you're just liking a picture of your friend's dog.
Yeah.
Colombo's profound insight is about horizontal surveillance.
It's horizontal surveillance.
Think of the panopticon, the ultimate theoretical prison, where one guard can see every prisoner. The genius of Web 2.0 is that the panopticon no longer needs a central guard.
Because we do it to ourselves.
Through digital platforms, we happily, eagerly surveil each other. We turn our private lives into public data in exchange for the dopamine hit of connection.
We are literally paying for our own surveillance with our desire to be liked. And the financial result of this architecture is just staggering. When I was reading through the numbers in this report, I actually had to stop and reread this one statistic because it broke my brain.
I know exactly which one you're going to say.
Apple's market capitalization alone is roughly $3.5 trillion. To put that in perspective for you, That single company is worth nearly half of the total wealth owned by the bottom 50% of the entire human population.
Half of humanity.
Half. That isn't a natural market outcome. That is the result of deliberate architectural choices and a total catastrophic failure of regulation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we're looking at what the researchers call the compute divide. The physical underlying infrastructure of the internet has been entirely monopolized.
Entirely.
Right now, just 3 companies, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, control over 63% of the $400 billion global cloud market.
That's a massive bottleneck.
And when it comes to the hardware powering the future, NVIDIA controls between 80 and 90% of the advanced GPU market for artificial intelligence. We are entering an era of data colonialism.
Data colonialism, yeah.
As researchers Coldry and Mejias point out, the global north extracts raw behavioral data from users in the global south. Think of data workers in developing nations, labeling images for pennies an hour, processes it in massive server farms, and uses it to enrich northern shareholders.
It's the same old story.
It is the exact same colonial extraction model of the past centuries, just applied to human cognition.
And that word cognition is the alarm bell here. Because unlike the machines of the Industrial Revolution that automated physical labor, putting weavers and factory workers out of jobs, generative AI automates thinking.
It automates the mind.
Yes. The report warns that AI is coming directly for the middle-class knowledge workers. We're talking about the junior financial analysts, the translators, the mid-level coders, the paralegals.
The white-collar jobs?
These are the exact people who historically benefited from the wealth compression of the 1970s. The AI isn't going to replace the billionaires. It's going to replace the people who manage their wealth.
That's a really sharp way to put it.
So what does this all mean? Are we just totally stuck in this digital cage? What about Web3 or crypto or decentralized social media networks like Mastodon? Can't they save us?
The report is remarkably blunt about this, labeling them false prophets.
False prophets. Ouch.
Take Web3 and Ethereum. The entire utopia of decentralized crypto software relies almost entirely on centralized hardware.
Right, the cloud.
The vast majority of Ethereum nodes actually run on Amazon Web Services. As the systems thinker Buckminster Fuller once warned, you cannot solve a structural problem by relying on the exact infrastructure that caused it in the first place.
It's a total paradox.
Furthermore, crypto has created a wealth asymmetry that is actually worse than Web 2.0. 90% of crypto tokens are held by just 1% of users.
That is insane.
As for the Fediverse, things like Mastodon, it's structurally honest and decentralized, but it suffers from scallop growth.
Meaning people come and go.
Exactly. People flock to it when a big tech CEO does something scandalous, but they quickly leave because it's slightly harder to use. The hard truth is that freedom requires friction, and most users simply prefer the comfort of a well-designed, sociable chain over the difficulty of true digital freedom.
So if Web3 is a false prophet, what is the real solution?
We have to look at the algorithmic commons.
Right. The FollowTheAlgorithm collective lays out a blueprint for this. And it goes way beyond just passing a few antitrust laws. Sure, the European Union's Digital Markets Act is a nice start for keeping tech gatekeepers in check, but it's fundamentally trying to regulate a private market.
It's not enough on its own.
Not at all. We don't just need better rules for their sandbox. We need entirely new public infrastructures. We need a massive injection of public investment. The U.S. CHIPS Act put $52 billion into semiconductor manufacturing.
A huge move.
The authors argue we need that exact level of financial commitment from governments to build public AI infrastructures. Because when we tried public-private partnerships like the Gaia X Cloud project in Europe, they completely failed.
They got swallowed up.
The American tech giants just swooped in and co-opted the board.
And the technical distinction here is absolutely critical for our future. We have to be precise about what an algorithmic commons actually is. Right now, companies like Meta are releasing AI models like Llama and loudly calling them open source.
But they aren't really.
The report clarifies this is a dangerous deception. They are what's called open weights.
Open weights, okay.
This means you can use the model, you can play with the final product, but Meta completely hides the training data. To put it simply, it's like a developer giving you the blueprint to a house, allowing you to walk around inside it, but refusing to tell you what toxic materials the walls might be made of or whose land they stole to build it.
That is a great analogy.
Genuine open source requires total transparency from top to bottom. The report identifies initiatives like Common Crawl, Eleuther AI, and Hugging Face, as the true embryos of a new digital commons. These are the groups building fully transparent data sets and models for the public good.
Okay, let's pull all of this together for you. The open internet you might remember from the 90s wasn't some natural evolution of technology bending toward freedom. It was a highly engineered 15-year anomaly born from wartime survival and Californian countercultural dreams.
A brief illusion.
The centripetal forces of capital have absolutely reclaimed the network today, turning us from active publishing nodes into passive, constantly surveilled terminals. But, and this is the hopeful part, that 15-year window is proof of concept.
It proves it can be done.
It proves that decentralized digital power is actually possible, but only if we intentionally design the legal, economic, and public structures to protect it. We cannot just hope technology will save us, we have to build the commons ourselves.
And this raises an important question, something I really want to leave you to reflect on today. Building on Fausto Colombo's idea that digital control relies on our willing, sociable participation, we have to ask ourselves if the entire panopticon is powered by our desire to be seen and connected, what would a modern digital strike actually look like?
A digital strike.
Could we collectively withhold our behavioral surplus without entirely disconnecting from modern society? Or has the cage, as Norbert Wiener feared, truly become the world?
That is a heavy, necessary question to carry with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep looking behind the interface, and always question the algorithms that shape your world. We'll catch you next time.